My name's Rahul. I was born in Hyderabad. When I was one, my family migrated to California. I've been in California ever since. I visited a few times, but I was born in Hyderabad and I'm Telugu. నా పేరు రాహుల్. నేను నా వయసు 24. నేను ఒక సంవత్సరం వయసులో ఉన్నప్పుడు మనం US లో వచ్చాం. So I learned Spanish just kind of out of pure interest. Being in California, there are a lot of Spanish speakers. As I was finishing up my learning of Telugu, I naturally led into, okay, what's next? And so I decided to learn Spanish. One of the things about growing up in this country is that it was only my immediate family who migrated to the US. So we have a big family, but they all still live back in India. And so when we would visit, my parents didn't necessarily push me to learn Telugu as I was growing up. And so I didn't pick it up naturally. I could understand quite a bit of what they were saying, but speaking wise, it was as if I didn't know anything. And so it was so hard to communicate to my relatives when I visited when I was a little bit younger. A year ago, I visited India and I knew that this time I wanted to be able to speak with my relatives because I wanted to establish that, personal connection. It had been 8 years since the last time I had came. And I really wanted to make that personal connection because there's that immediate kind of love that you feel, especially since like being in the US, not having as much family, but then going to another country and realizing you have like a ton of family and they're all like your mom's brothers or sisters and your cousins. And so that's like a different type of love that you feel. And that really motivated me to learn and want to connect with them. So I had just finished up college and I had known that in a month, my mom and I would be traveling to India. So being at the level that I was where I really couldn't conversate at all, I used that month before we traveled to India to learn as much as possible. And I reached sort of a decent level, but even through my stay there, we stayed for about a month. My stay there, I was trying to learn and improve the whole time. And even after we had came back, so I had stayed there for about, I think, a month and a half. And then I came back and I continued to learn because I knew my level still wasn't to what I would like it to be at. And so I continued to learn. It was a really cool experience. One being that I hadn't seen them in 8 years. So the last time I visited, I was 14. I was still like in 8th grade. And now I came back, I just finished college and I was able to like speak with them. It meant a lot. And I could tell that even for them, they were really happy to see me able to speak the language. And it's definitely special. The one unfortunate thing is if you're not continually practicing and reinforcing this, your level can like decrease. So I guess that's maybe a tip to those people who are committed to learning is even after you feel like you've reached that kind of level where you feel like comfortable and you can have conversations, try and keep up a regular practice because that's going to really solidify it for you. We moved in an area where there weren't many Telugu people around, if any at all. And so that also kind of hindered the natural process of learning. If I had maybe a family friend and like he was my age and we could kind of speak and that sort of thing, it definitely would have helped me learn. It was a very independent process other than like being able to speak with my parents. Like, I would have loved to have someone learning at the time that I was, because when you're speaking to your parents who like are basically like, yeah, this is easy. Like, how don't you know this already? It can maybe feel alone because language, you want to communicate with, you want that community, you want that sort of thing. So it would definitely have helped. I did try writing some alphabets. I was with my grandma. We were at my aunt's house and she was showing me some of the alphabets and it was cool to kind of share that, because I think it's more intimate, it's more special when someone's kind of like teaching and you're learning from someone, especially like someone like your grandma. That would be an area I can improve in for sure. My main thing was trying to be able to speak. I didn't have like a great time period to really kind of dive in and everything like that. So what really motivated me was knowing that I wasn't at the level that I felt comfortable at. I didn't feel as if I could, really communicate what I was feeling or the exact phrases or the exact words that I wanted to say. Because, when you think in your native language and you want to translate what your thoughts of the native language into, the new language. And I wasn't able to do that properly. So that pushed me because I didn't want it to be a surface level type of conversation. And so I wanted to really get deeper. And so I have not been practicing as of late just because my priorities have changed and just, career wise and that sort of thing. But I do know that like when I visit, I'm going to like immediately get back onto like what I've been studying and like everything like that. And I have definitely improved. So I feel like every time it's going to get better and better till I'm going to be comfortable and, I'm not going to have to worry about forgetting or anything like that. It was really cool to me when I was able to formulate those sentences when I was pronouncing things and I was just messing up all the time and all these sorts of things. It was really cool for it to come out fluidly, I've improved drastically from where I was at before because I genuinely couldn't even say basic things without like stuttering or being able to pronounce it wrong. And yeah, my current goal would be to improve the conversational ability. I do mess up from time to time. Even my relatives have told me like, hey, your Telugu hasn't improved. I want to be able to speak and not worry about messing up and that sort of thing. Just have it come fluidly. And then if I decide to go to that next step of reading and writing, yeah, I think first is the conversation though. Growing up, my dad, he would always play music, and of course the Telugu songs would come up. This is a beautiful song, but it's called Kannanule. There's a music producer. His name is Devi Sri Prasad. He's an amazing producer. He does a lot of songs for movies and that sort of thing. So I guess some examples of songs I really like is Gundelo e Mundo. That means like in your heart, like what's in there. Chali Chaliga, Feel My Love. One of the really cool things is we've always watched Telugu movies as we were growing up. And so now it's very cool because I'm able to really, really understand what's going on. And so there's a lot of comedy and there's a lot of things that like now I'm like really, really laughing at these jokes. Kick is a great movie. My favorite hero is Allu Arjun. I like a lot of his movies like Arya. But this movie is honestly, it's so good. It's like, I promise you, it's gonna make you so emotional. It's so good. This is more of a slang type of word. Kattilaga undi, that means it's like super, it's like, So like if you want to describe someone's food, like I'll tell my mom this now. She asked me how the food is. I was like, Kattilaga undi. And then yeah, it brings a smile because it's kind of like more of a slang, kind of like, one thing to kind of like get there is kind of add like an Indian tinge to even English words. Me personally, I have this voice. I have an English American voice. And so when I speak Telugu or even English with them, I will add sort of that accent or, Indian tinge to my English as well, because that's how they're speaking. So if I'm speaking to my mom and I'm just speaking like regular English, and even my Telugu itself, sometimes they'll joke around with me because I'm not pronouncing things right or that sort of thing. I made a video after this process describing the resources, the methods I had used to learn Telugu. And so I wish I had that video to use and kind of grab these resources and that sort of thing. And that was my intention when I made the video, because I knew Telugu being the language that it is, it's only confined to the state, Telangana and even Andhra Pradesh. It being confined to that state, there's not as many resources for people to learn compared to like a language like English or Spanish or even Russian. Like there's tons of resources available. And so when I was trying to learn, that was my initial struggle. It was trying to find these resources which weren't readily available, which seems weird because we have the internet. It feels like everything's available to us. And so, yeah, I wish I had that video. And I'm glad to be able to provide that to other people. So I would recommend all the resources, but if I was teaching them, I would first teach them the basics of like establishing a conversation and a connection with someone. Because I think if you're able to do that and if you're confident in that, you'd be willing to do that on your own, right? So like, hi, how are you? Or like maybe daily activities that'll get you through the day. So like if you were to go to the market, how would you barter, or how would you ask where the tomatoes are at, or that sort of thing. So really the basics of kind of life and everyday things, rather than maybe like these fancy words or that sort of thing. One of the most important ways, this is dependent on your goals, of course, but if your goal is to speak with someone, it's to get a conversational type of practice like immediately, as soon as you can, as soon as you feel like you're ready, you're comfortable, you should get that practice immediately, because it's going to, in terms of your time invested, that's going to be your best return on time. I can't necessarily explain the little details on why it's so beneficial to like memory and being able to like actually speak with people, but speaking with people or a conversation type of practice is the number one key, in my opinion. Apart from that, I would say when you're learning vocabulary, there's something called spaced repetition. And it's a study technique that a lot of people, like people in medical school, use because in medical school, you have to learn basically tons of information, It's just based on the principle that newer or difficult words are going to appear more frequently and older or less difficult words appear less frequently. So their software, the software's name is called Anki, but it basically handles the process of sorting which ones are difficult for you and which ones are less difficult for you. It sorts that out for you based on, you just have to click, was this easy? Was this hard? And you can make the flashcards yourself. So that's another big thing. Don't necessarily look for someone else's flashcards because it's not going to be meaningful to you. That's another really key thing, is you want to make things meaningful to you and meaningful to how you remember things or how you interpret conversation and that sort of thing, because that's how it really sticks with you. So I had a notebook where I would write things out. Instead of like typing things, if you write things, there's something about how you're interpreting the writing and that sort of thing that is better for learning and retention than like maybe typing on a computer. But I had a notebook, I had those flashcards that I would do, and I would make the flashcards, which really helped. So maybe a tip on that is to, with that software and making the flashcard, you can even insert a picture. So you could find a picture off Google and then like add the picture in. So what I would do is, like, let's say the thing I was learning was a sentence called like, you destroyed this plant, like "Ichetu nashnam chisau." So what I would do is I would put a picture of a destroyed plant in there just to kind of like remember it and that sort of thing. Before you start learning, in some document on your phone, Google Documents, someplace, really articulate your why. Why do you want to learn this? And really articulate it so that when you do lose motivation, you can go back to that and read and kind of understand why. What was the purpose of you doing this? You know, really think about this and really articulate it. And I think that can really reignite that spark sometimes. I will say it comes in stages. So in the beginning, you're going to see tons of progress and it's going to be very, very motivating. But that is a natural thing when you're learning something new. And as that process sort of stagnates, there's going to be a period where you're not going to be seeing, or you're not going to be like noticing progress. And so it's really important in that time to just stick with it, because you are improving. You are improving, even though you may not notice it, or compared to before when you could really, really see things and you're not seeing that progress anymore. That's just a natural part of the language learning process. There's going to come a time where you're going to feel as if like you're not really progressing, but I want you to know that you are. It's just not as noticeable. When you feel like you're struggling, or you feel as if maybe the practice or the technique you've been using up until that time feels kind of old, or you're not improving, I would say try and have fun with it. Try and add that element of fun back in, whether it's listening to music or watching a movie. Movies are really great. I've had a lot of friends tell me for other languages, they would watch the movies and that would be their source of learning or inspiration and that sort of thing. Because who doesn't want to watch a movie? So I would say really alternate between things that you enjoy and the more difficult things, because the more difficult things, there's a reason why it's difficult. It's because you're losing a lot of brain power to understand and learn things. And so that's where you're going to probably get the most benefit. But I would say you're not necessarily losing any benefit by watching a movie or doing something else. I would say really try and add that element of fun back into whatever you're doing, because at the end of the day, it should be a fun process. I would say the biggest struggle is developing the habit initially. So it's so easy to get swept up in life, in other priorities. And so for me, what I found really valuable is to do it first thing in the morning and then get the rest of my whatever I needed to do. At least I felt like, okay, I got my practice in, I got my 30 minutes in. So I think that's a big struggle for a lot of people. And so if you can commit a certain amount of time and make that a habit, you know, it's going to depend on person to person, their energy levels, their commitments, their time. But that habit is super important, because we touched on it. Sometimes you're not going to feel like you're progressing. That habit, it's what's going to keep you going up. Telugu is a really beautiful language. My dad would always tell me this. People would say Telugu is like beautiful. It's almost as if the expression of the language is in art. There's like musicality to it. And you want to really share the culture of different places and that sort of thing. And for me, I am a bit biased because I am Telugu, but being able to share that culture and share where you're from, I think is really important, because there's going to be things that you learn from different cultures and different ways of life. And at the end of the day, we're all human, but this diversity is what makes life and makes everything beautiful. So I think it's important to share that and take pride in where you're from and your customs, traditions, language, all those sorts of things. So I think it's really cool that you're doing this. I think it's important because ultimately you want to connect with people with language.